Good morning, everyone. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Thursday, July 16th. Coming to you live from Seoul, I'm Shin Se-min. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at this hour. President Moon Jae-in finally set to visit the National Assembly for its opening ceremony 50 days after lawmakers began their term, the longest ever delay. He's likely to hit points on his administration's economic development projects. President Trump wants another summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, but only if progress is likely on what was agreed upon in Singapore. Despite speculation to the contrary, Washington's top diplomat says it's unlikely to happen before the November election in the U.S. South Korea's central bank holds the benchmark rate steady at 0.5% despite the virus-induced economic downturn. This as concerns that another rate cut might overheat the nation's housing market even further. Our starting point this morning, President Moon Jae-in will be delivering a speech to lawmakers later this afternoon to mark the formal opening of the 21st National Assembly. Now, this afternoon's ceremony is being held almost 50 days since lawmakers started their new terms due to rival political parties wrangling over the distribution of standing committee chair posts. President Moon initially planned to address the assembly in early June, but he's expected to do that and call for bipartisan efforts today to overcome COVID-19 and seek legislative support for state tasks such as his administration's Korean New Deal initiative. And now to the latest on nuclear diplomacy. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says President Trump might hold another summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, but only if the two sides are likely to make progress on the agreement the two leaders had reached during their first summit in Singapore. Our Lee Seung-jae with the details.
Will there or won't there be another summit between the leaders of the United States and North Korea before the November 3rd U.S. presidential election? It's a question that has been raised on numerous occasions. On Wednesday, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was asked about it again. Pompeo said President Trump would hold another summit, but only if they are likely to make progress on the agreement they reached in Singapore. At their first summit in Singapore in June 2018, Trump and Kim Jong-un agreed to work toward the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula and improve bilateral ties. However, efforts stalled since the second summit in Hanoi in February 2019, which collapsed due to differences over the scope of North Korea's denuclearization and sanctions relief from the U.S. Despite the prospects of a third summit between the two sides, Pompeo later downplayed the possibility of holding it this year. According to Pompeo, the North has given mixed signals and has decided not to engage with the U.S. Earlier this month, U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Stephen Biegun also shot down the possibility of an in-person meeting, citing the COVID-19 pandemic. However, Pompeo reaffirmed Washington's stance on the importance of denuclearizing the peninsula and bringing stability to the region. He said that in order to achieve it, the U.S. needs a willing partner, adding that the North Koreans have chosen at this point in time not to engage in a way that can lead to a potential solution. He remains hopeful that the North will change their mind, saying the Trump administration looks forward to engaging with them in order to get the right outcome. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The United States will be imposing visa restrictions on employees working for Chinese technology firms like Huawei. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said Wednesday that the companies provide material support to regimes engaged in human rights violations. It's unclear which firms and how many people will be affected, but he added TikTok and other Chinese communication platforms may be banned as well due to the security concerns. Also brushing on another contentious issue, Washington's top diplomat said it'll use all tools to support countries that believe China has violated their maritime claims in the South China Sea. International media outlets are considering leaving Hong Kong over the national security law and its restrictions on free speech. The New York Times has already decided to relocate part of its Asian office to here, capital Seoul. Our Chang Tae-hyun with more.
The New York Times has decided to move part of its Asian office from Hong Kong to Seoul. This comes after the implementation of Hong Kong's new national security law, which even allows the punishing of foreigners that make any anti-Chinese comments. The New York Times said it will move its digital team of journalists, a third of its workers, to the South Korean capital over the next year. Asia-Pacific correspondents and its printing and marketing team will stay in Hong Kong. Seoul beat the other candidate cities, Tokyo, Bangkok, and Singapore, because the South Korean capital is seen as friendly to foreign companies, has an independent press, and plays a big role in the Asian market. Many global media firms have a branch in Hong Kong as it's close to mainland China and had a free press. CNN and Bloomberg have decided to stay in Hong Kong at this time, but other foreign media outlets might leave Hong Kong.
I think that the New York Times arrangements for its staff or operations are their own business. We won't make any comments on the internal plans of a foreign media outlet.
This comes as President Trump on Tuesday issued an executive order and signed legislation to end preferential treatment for Hong Kong.
Today, I also signed an executive order ending U.S. preferential treatment for Hong Kong. Hong Kong will now be treated the same as mainland China. No special privileges, no special economic treatment, and no export of sensitive technologies.
The U.S. has also placed sanctions on Chinese officials over the Hong Kong security law. Chang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
Several high-profile Twitter accounts have been affected in a never-before-seen hacking spree. The Twitter accounts of Uber, Apple, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Barack Obama, and several others were hacked on Wednesday Eastern Time, with tweets telling their followers to send Bitcoin to a specific address. Suspected Bitcoin scammers were in control of some of the world's most prominent accounts for more than 2 hours and tricked at least a few hundred people into transferring their cryptocurrency. One of the wallets linked to the tweets reportedly received over 12 Bitcoin worth over than $110,000 at the current exchange rate. Twitter said it is looking into the attack, with the FBI's San Francisco office saying that it is also aware of the latest incident. Candidates running to head up the World Trade Organization are delivering their speeches on the candidacy in Geneva. The WTO says 3 candidates from Mexico, Nigeria, and Egypt spoke on Wednesday local time in the order they applied for the top job. South Korea's Trade Minister Jae-myung, who's also in the running, will give her speech on Thursday local time. More candidates will do so, and the same on Friday, and the WTO plans to complete the election of its new Director General no later than mid-November. As the world races to develop a vaccine for COVID-19, President Moon Jae-in, together with the leaders from 7 other countries, are calling for equal access to the vaccine once it's fully developed. In a joint Washington Post op-ed published on Wednesday, the world leaders urged countries to cooperate on manufacturing and distributing a vaccine to ensure less developed countries don't lose out to rich ones. They also stress that immunization is the world's best chance of ending this pandemic, but only if all countries have access to that vaccine. The leaders called for joint efforts to develop a set of transparent, fair, and scientifically sound principles to guide global distribution. The world leaders who jointly penned the op-ed were from Canada, Ethiopia, New Zealand, South Africa, Spain, Sweden, and Tunisia. Now, this just coming in moments ago. South Korea's central bank has kept its benchmark interest rate steady at 0.5%. Now, that decision was made during the Bank of Korea's monetary policy meeting early this morning as it looks to nurse the economy through the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as avoid a further rate cut that could overheat the already heated real estate market. The rate freeze comes a little less than 2 months after the bank slashed its key interest rate to the historic low of 0.5% in late May. And we'll have more details on that in our next newscast at noon Korea time. It's either deal or no deal. South Korea's largest low-cost carrier, Teju Air's final call on its planned acquisition of cash-strapped Eastar Jet is drawing keen attention from industry officials as Eastar Jet failed to meet the deadline suggested by Jeju Air. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
The time has come for South Korea's biggest low-cost carrier, Jeju Air, to make a final decision on its planned takeover of its debt-ridden rival, Eastar Jet. Wednesday was a deadline suggested by the former to meet specific conditions, but the latter failed to meet them. On July 1st, Jeju Air asked Eastar Jet to settle all its debts within the next 10 working days in order to proceed. This includes some $141 million of unpaid wages, as well as delayed payments for fuel and the use of airport facilities. About $20 million of the debt are unpaid wages, especially following the COVID-19 pandemic. Jeju Air has, however, said that Eastar Jet's failure to meet the deadline does not mean the acquisition deal will be cancelled immediately, adding a final decision will be made following comprehensive consultations. However, many see the conditions first suggested by Jeju Air as a tall order that cannot be met by the cash-strapped budget carrier.
If the M&A is not finalized, it will result in a financial loss of $9.6 million for Jeju Air and leaves no solution for Eastar Jet. As a result, many are concerned about the outcome.
The decision is not an easy one for Jeju Air as it already reported an operating loss of $55 million in the first half of this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A decision to cancel the acquisition will result in Eastar Air going bust, with 1,600 employees losing their jobs. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's Supreme Court will be ruling on Thursday on Gyeonggi-do Province Governor Jae-myung's appeal against charges of abuse of power and violating election law. Lee was previously indicted for having his older brother forcibly admitted to a mental hospital back in 2012. And he was also found guilty of lying about that during a TV debate in 2018. A lower court found him not guilty, but a higher court overturned that and fined him around $2,500 for violating the election law. If the Supreme Court rules against him, Lee will be stripped of his governorship and be banned from seeking political office for 5 years. The ruling is set for 2 p.m. Korea time and will be live streamed on YouTube and broadcast live on TV.
Good morning. Today is Chobok, the day marking the start of Korea's hottest period of the summer. So expect a month or so of sweltering temperatures day and night. And right on cue, we'll notice hotter afternoon temperatures across the country, 2 to 7 degrees higher than yesterday. For a closer look, Seoul and Chuncheon will get up to 30 degrees Celsius this afternoon, but Busan and Jeju will be relatively cooler at 25 degrees under mostly sunny skies. Meanwhile, there is a chance of heavy passing showers for these blue-colored regions from mid-afternoon to late tonight. It could pour down at 30 millimeters an hour along with thunder and lightning, so please be prepared. Seoul will also see heavy passing showers tomorrow. We could see up to 70 millimeters in the afternoon alone. Then one last blast of monsoon rain is in store from Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
And that is all the news we have at this hour, but we will be back with more of the day's headlines coming up in our later newscast at noon Korea time, so stay close. Thanks for watching.